Keep pushing that boulder to the top of the hill. Welcome one and all to Suckville.
Extraordinary stories from ordinary humans? Yes, please. This is Live from Suckville. I'm your host, Silva Florence, an expat, writer, cyclist, and podcaster, currently laid up in Suckville after losing my apartment in a flood. Did you know that you are here on this planet having these experiences that you have, these traumas and difficulties that come your way, to remember more of who you are? As difficult as life can be, and my guest today, Charlotte Gray, knows all about life's difficulties, there's always an opportunity in every situation for growth, for remembering, for healing. For better or worse, many of us need to be cracked open. We need to experience the dark before the dawn to become the people that we are supposed to become. And so let's listen as Charlotte tells us a bit more about her process of becoming. All right. Hello, everybody in Suckville, and welcome back. Today, I have an awesome guest with me. We are going to call her Charlotte Gray to protect her identity. And Charlotte is a young female in her mid-20s from the east coast of Canada. A few things in this world that bring life to her soul are her morning cup of fresh brewed coffee with her dog nestled alongside her, deep laughter with good company, sunshine, and adventure filled with spontaneity. I think those are some things that would pretty much light up my soul too. So how are you doing today, Charlotte?
I'm doing pretty good. It's quite cold here today. I think it's like minus 20.
Burr.
Yeah, it's a typical Canadian winter day. However, the sun is shining though. So in my opinion, it is a nice day out.
So as my listeners know, the reason that we have people come on to this show is because they have made it through some sort of difficulty. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, Charlotte?
And thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you.
Me too. I'm quite excited. So yeah, I guess my story begins a few years ago. It started off as like a really exciting story. I met this young man who was full of life, full of energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember our first date and I remember thinking, I was like, he has so much, like I said, energy, what he brings to the table. He seemed like a wonderful human being.
Charismatic, maybe? Was he charismatic?
Yeah. And, you know, and that was the situation for a few months. And then I found myself for about a year and a half in a very abusive relationship, both emotionally and physically. And, you know, that was kind of my life for a year and a half. And looking back, how much I, as an individual, shifted during that time and how I lost bits of myself throughout that time period as well. It's also part of the story. But the main reason why I'm here today is also because in 2021, it became very violent. And, you know, to the point where I was physically injured. I'm healthy now. But the situation itself was pretty traumatic.
I'm curious if you are willing to share, if you want to maybe tell us like what happened that day in the main episode.
Yes, of course. So the main event actually is I moved to his hometown. He wanted to move back, be close to his family. So I picked up my life, moved with him, and we were only living together for about 2 weeks. It was short and sweet.
Yeah.
I knew that the day would come, sadly. And I think I knew deep down that I needed that day to happen in order for me to like cold turkey walk away from this relationship.
When you say that you knew that it was coming, were there signs before this?
There was definitely a few things that occurred over our relationship. His anger became worse and worse as time went on. He's, you know, smashed a lot of my belongings and normalized it.
Man.
Threatened me had me up against the wall a couple times. And as time went on, it got more and more aggressive. And then during what we're going to call the main event,
Yeah.
I found out that he had been cheating on me for about 2 months.
Oh, man.
Which, I wasn't fully surprised. I kind of knew it was happening, but it was like just I needed to actually confirm it.
Yeah.
Which I did. And, that was devastating. But it wasn't the first time that he had inappropriate engagements with other women. So as I went to leave, my belongings were smashed. And then he did strangle me. And so that's what his charges are for, is strangling and domestic dispute and assault and smashing my belongings. And it was scary, obviously.
It sounds incredibly scary.
The main thing that I think about when I reflect on it is that moment when he was strangling me, and he was doing it so hard you could see his arms trembling. There was that much force, and I remember telling myself it was like a standstill moment because I was panicking. I couldn't do anything, and it was like it just froze.
Yeah.
And it was like, you're gonna stop breathing anyway. And eventually he released me, and we went from there. But at the time I was in my young 20s and lived my life very freely, we could say it.
Yeah.
So to encounter that at a young age and the aftermath of it really shook up my life.
Yeah, I can only imagine. When he stopped, did he stop on his own accord? Did he just realize all of a sudden that he was about to really harm someone?
I think so. And it was very confusing at the time because when he stopped, he then tried to comfort me.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And tell me he loved me and all this. And I was like, this is, in my mind is like, I need to get out of this situation. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I need to get me and my dog out of here, and we need to go. Don't know where I'm going, but I got to go.
So what did you do? Did you leave?
I called my sister-in-law. I was like, I need you to meet me at least halfway home because I lived about 4 hours away from where I came from. And I need to figure out, because I moved there, got a new job. I didn't have any friends, any family there. I just had him.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, got my sister-in-law to meet me, and I was like, I need to take my dog. I need to go back to this community because I'm supposed to start work in about an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And I need to quit.
I like that you were that responsible. Damn woman.
Yeah, in all of chaos and crisis, I'm like, my priorities are set. Get the dog and go to work.
I don't know if I would have been thinking so clearly.
I don't know how I was either. But so thankfully she came and got the dog, and I went into work, and God love my coworker. I walked in, I started crying, and I was like, I'm quitting. This is my 2 weeks notice, but I'm not coming back for those 2 weeks. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm gone. Anyway, and he was like, don't worry about it. Leave your stuff. Go do what you got to do.
Did you tell him what happened?
We later on reconnected, and I gave him a little more information about what took place. And he was very, very supportive and very empathetic towards the situation. And he said, you know what, you did what you had to do. So I actually got some of my belongings. I carried out a few bags in the process and came back to the community that I originally left. I found an apartment that was very much out of my budget, but it was the only one that was pet friendly. So I signed a lease for there. So I had a week off, found a job, signed 2 contracts, and had to work over, the full-time hours a week to pay for my apartment and raise a little puppy in the process. And it was one of the most challenging things I have ever gone through.
Zero stress.
Truthfully.
I can imagine. Zero stress.
I was exhausted.
Yeah.
There was one moment I remember, I was probably about a week in my apartment. I was all by myself. My family lives a little bit away. So I remember I sat up. I was getting out of bed, haven't slept in a very long time. And I remember leaning over the side of my bed, and I had that much adrenaline and cortisol in my system. I haven't been able to eat, haven't been able to sleep. I have this young, 10-week-old puppy who's crying, and I'm trying to train him. And I'm sitting there, and my body was so sore that I was in that much physical pain that I sat there, and I was like, I don't know how much longer I can go like this.
Yeah.
I felt like everything around me, it was taken from me. And then I had to problem solve as best as I could to come up with a solution, all the while trying to somehow heal from all of that, not knowing where to start, not knowing how to organize my life. But I did it, and I have a beautiful apartment now and a wonderful dog.
Well, from what I've seen of it, when you were moving from the kitchen to the living room, it looks pretty cute.
Thank you. Very lovely. It's very peaceful. I live a little bit in the countryside now, so it's
Nice.
It's what I need. Yeah.
So, when you were completely overwhelmed and you were sitting there just trying to get your head straight in those moments, where did you start?
I think letting go of the expectations that I had at that time. I have pretty high expectations, sometimes unrealistic. So learning to let go of those expectations of myself, of what training my dog was going to look like, of what I was going to offer, my work at that time, to just do enough in order to survive. I'm a social worker, so I have a pretty high demanding role.
Yeah.
So, setting an expectation that I'm there for my clients and I do my work, but at this time, like there's a boundary on that. This is all that I can give to these people at this time.
Boundaries. Boundaries are very, very healthy.
Yes.
It's hard for people to set up boundaries sometimes.
Exactly.
Why was it hard for you to set them up?
I think I had this very negative view of what boundaries were. Given that I haven't always had healthy relationships, and when I put in boundaries, they were often never respected.
Okay.
Right. So when I was putting in boundaries, I was viewing it as like, oh, I'm a bad person. I'm selfish. I'm not putting others before me. And then as my journey went on and I realized, what self-love is and kindness actually towards others and all that stuff and what boundaries mean, it's been a lot easier for me to implement those in my life. But yeah, and stepping back and being like, this is in my control. Like, maybe my dog is not going to jump through hoops, but he's going to be house trained.
Sure.
So setting, I know it's a very funny example, but in terms of what my expectations were and what I had to let go of and just focus on literally surviving and letting go of all the should be's. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be doing this. I should make sure my dishes are done every single night. A silly example is if I didn't do the dishes, I was overwhelmed with it. And then I felt the huge amount of shame and guilt, right? Of like my life, I should be able to do this. I should have my life in order. So learning to let go of all of those outside non-essential things at that time was a really important step for me.
Yeah, using your energy wisely, I suppose. So after that, after you kind of decided to start letting some things go and changing your view on yourself and your situation, what did you start to do to really get yourself to heal?
I'm still healing.
Yeah, it's a lifelong thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was really hard for me to get myself out of survival mode, fight or flight. And that was my primary goal, is how to feel safe in my surroundings. Given that, once I moved back to my community, my ex-partner did end up coming back as well to the same community and breaching his no contact order on several occasions.
What did he do?
So he would find a way to reach out to me on social medias. He would be blocked. He'd find other ways. He had like his friends kind of reach out on his behalf. And then with the domestic violence, I went through the domestic violence court and I had a victim services caseworker. They do an assessment with you for how much risk you're at. And I scored fairly high on it.
Okay.
And it's probably not an assessment you do want to score high on.
No, I imagine not.
I believe it's at a 13. I'm not quite sure, but I scored about 11 or a 12. So I was at like pretty high risk.
What put you at higher risk?
They ask you like a series of questions about your relationship, things that happened in it, and there was one question I remember specifically, and the woman asked me, like, do you think he's capable of killing you? And that was probably the most toughest question to ask because it's yourself that you're talking about, right? It's like, does somebody have the capacity of killing me? And I'm sitting there and it was like, it was a very hard question to answer, and when I answered it, I was like, well, he already could have, right? Like if he stopped my breathing long enough, or if I did stay and something else happened, who's to say he's not going to take it? If his violence got worse as time went on, what is the next step after strangling somebody?
Yeah, strangling is pretty intense.
Exactly. So that when I did answered all those questions, put me at a higher risk. And so, yeah, it took me a long time to get out of survival mode because I was constantly looking over my shoulder. I had a safety plan with my friends that when I woke up in the morning, I texted them where I was going for the day. When I got home at night, in for the night, I had to text them to let them know I was okay. So I had a designated person that I would check in with every day for quite some time. There was one occasion where he did breach, and I remember the police officer asking me, on numerous occasions, does he know where you live? Are you sure he doesn't know where you live? And so when I checked in the next day, and I was like, why did he ask me 15 times if he knew where I lived? And they informed me, like, if he knew where you lived, you weren't safe enough for the evening if we released him. So, and every time a car that looks like his drove by, I was automatically sent into panic mode and fight or flight. So my nervous system, it took a long, long time for me to get out of that. And that's kind of what I dedicated my whole healing journey to, is how to become safe again in my own space when I am walking out on the sidewalk. And I approached healing in a variety of ways, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Still work to be done. I know I can still be sometimes triggered, but yeah.
What would you say that are things that might trigger you even now?
So we're still ongoing in the court process. So I was actually doing quite well. And then I got kind of a little re-triggered when I had to write my victim impact statement. That was quite re-traumatizing.
Is that like re-describing what happened, basically?
You kind of write down what the effects of the situation was. So emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, what all happened to you because of this.
I imagine that can be pretty overwhelming when you make like a big tally like that.
Yeah, it was like bullet points, and I had to name everything that I felt, everything that I went through. I almost didn't submit one because I felt like, the hardships I went through, that's a very vulnerable thing, right? Like that is a piece of me. That is something that happened to me, something I've overcome, something I'm always working towards. And that part of my vulnerability, I think, is sacred. And I felt like he didn't have the privilege of knowing that. Because with a victim impact statement, it is presented to the accused as well.
Okay.
And I was like, he doesn't get the privilege to know what I went through, and how hard it was for me, and how it still impacts me almost 2 years later. But at the end of the day, I did decide to do it because I was like, if he does ever want to heal himself and know that his decisions, they impact people at a very intense level.
Yeah.
And I still actually have a triggered response to when I see a vehicle the same make as his drive by. I still have a moment of panic, and
I think that's understandable.
Yeah. And it also impacted my relationships after that, right? There was a long period of time where obviously I wasn't ready for the dating game. And then after that, when I was ready, there was a lot of things that I would say on one side, when I took the time to heal and worked on myself, especially my self-confidence, sense of worth, self-love, my relationships were ever able to grow and blossom. And there was things that I was like, you know what, that doesn't work for me, thank you, but no thanks.
I felt like you were able to know more when something was for you and when it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And what my standards are now in terms of like communication, but it also impacted my relationships in terms of like, I had to learn how to retrust people. How do I become safe with an individual again? How do I possibly become vulnerable with somebody again? Because it wasn't just, like, I didn't just go through a heartbreak of a breakup. I was physically attacked, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
So my whole sense of self was disrupted. My whole sense of safety and security was, right? And I felt like I had to protect it. And it's taking me quite a long time to let go of my protectors as well in order to have a healthy relationship with somebody. It's something I'm constantly working on.
Who are your protectors, or what are your protectors?
Oh, sorry, like my protectors in like my defense mechanisms or the walls that I build up, and not show that vulnerability.
Well, I think there's a lot of people in the world who just leave up the walls and then they go on like that, because it does take a lot of work to get in your dark spaces and look around.
Absolutely, it does. And I've noticed that too in other people, right? And, I recognize nobody's perfect. Everybody's working on their own journeys, but that it also takes effort and I think honestly, like appreciation to recognize those walls and be like, you know what, I want to be vulnerable with somebody. I want to feel all these things with another individual at a healthy level. So that means that I do have to work on them, right?
Right. Yeah, we all have things that we need to work on. So,
You know, this situation, like I said, it was traumatic and devastating. But at the same time, too, I'm almost feel a sense that I'm almost like thankful it happened because truthfully, I think without it happening, I don't know if I would have been able to reach the level of self growth that I needed and that I have put in. I don't know if I would have been able to achieve the level of self love and confidence that I have without it. Like, I've learned a significant amount of lessons from it. So, you know, and I recognize too that's not everybody's experience and everyone's journey is different. But
sure.
at the same time, too, like I said, it's almost, I think I almost needed it to happen to go on this path that I have been going on, because I know before, like, I didn't have healthy habits. I had a lot of risky behaviors. So to see the transition that I've made, you know, and the goals that I've made after all of this, it's heartwarming to me. Not the event, but the outcome after and the growth that I've had and who I've become.
I think, you know, somebody out there will probably be given a little bit of hope by hearing something like that.
I hope so.
Can I ask you a tricky question?
Absolutely.
Why do you think that you didn't leave him before this incident happened if you saw that there were some warning signs?
I ask myself this all the time. This is a tricky question. I know, looking back, the amount of shame that I have of staying in it. Shame because I didn't leave. You know, I knew 3 months into the relationship that there were significant red flags.
What were some of the red flags? His anger, you said.
His anger, he has a bad addictions issue, you know, one that wasn't manageable or that he had no interest in managing. His view on life was very different of mine, the way he treated people. So I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like a typical response in terms of like when the days were good, they were good.
Yeah.
I think I wanted him to be the person I thought he could be. And I hoped that he would turn into that if I put in extra work, if I did this, if I showed him what, you know, love could look like and what relationships could be, you know, which was kind of childish, I would say, of me to expect that. But I also think too, my level at that time of my self-worth was not great. So it's not that I like deserved that relationship by any means, because I didn't, and nobody does.
Nobody does.
But I think that I didn't have enough courage to walk away. Towards the end of it, like there was not much left of me. I disconnected from all my friends, didn't see my family much, you know, so if I did leave, it was kind of like the fear of putting in all the work again, you know, and at that time I wasn't ready to.
I mean, it can be daunting to leave, even a relationship that is not abusive, you know? It's just hard to, when you've been with somebody for a while, it's hard to remember what it's like being not with someone.
Right. You know, it was easier for me to pick up his habits and kind of join his routine versus starting over again, right? But I think it comes back to my confidence and my sense of worth that I have of myself, had of myself. Yeah, and I worked, like I said, very hard to ensure that I don't end up in that situation again.
Why do you think that you had like a low sense of self-worth to begin with?
I would just say kind of like my upbringing, just kind of the lifestyle that I had as a young adult. Could be a variety of things, truthfully.
You've said a couple of times like you had some risky behaviors or lifestyle before. It must have been quite a bit different than now.
Yes, now I'm like, I live out in the woods in a quiet space, you know, be home at 10 o'clock in bed.
Sounds very relaxing.
Right, with a cup of tea. Life is good. No, I lived a different lifestyle. I had different values. I didn't make great decisions for myself and for my future and for those around me, unfortunately. I just had a different way of living, per se, versus than I do now. I trying to be as healthy as I can be, but, you know, I'm hoping to, you know, complete a master's in social work. I have goals in my professional life, training for half marathons, so in my physical life. And I take the time to do both the emotional and spiritual work that I feel best connects with me, right? So taking the time to actually put in the work for myself and seeing the reward and knowing that I'm also deserving and worthy of that relationship to myself and with others.
Heck yeah, you are.
Yes, it took me a long time to realize that and appreciate that. But knowing that that worthiness, it's a big piece.
It's a huge piece. Why do you think sometimes it's like a trauma or something like that that makes us finally realize like our own self-worth?
That's a complex question.
I like to ask complex questions.
I think for me, like I remember some of those moments when I was sitting by myself in my apartment and my life was chaos and I was like, I don't want this. You know, I have choices I can make. I can either choose to put in the work, I can choose to go another direction and take an easy way out and not do it and live a very bleak life. So I think it was a matter of I wanted something different. I knew I could put in the work. I knew that I also didn't ever want to feel the way that I felt during those years of that relationship. You know, and I was hopeful that what I put in, I attract back.
I agree. Yeah.
I think it was just my desire to want different. You know, I wanted to hang out with different people. I wanted to meet different people. I wanted different experiences. I just wanted to find peace. I knew that that was going to take work for me to find that.
Yeah. And what would you say to somebody that's maybe still in that situation with someone, maybe they know they should leave, but they don't know quite how, abusive, emotionally or physically?
You deserve so much more. And even being single, you will have an opportunity to live a much better life than being with a partner who doesn't appreciate you, doesn't support you, is abusive. And I recognize how hard it is to leave those relationships, but being on the other side of it has way more meaning and value.
Yeah.
Even no matter regardless how stuck you are and financially, you know, if you're in marriage and you have kids, I know that's very complex leaving those situations, but try your hardest to find a solution, find your supports.
And you said that as far as support goes, you used your friends a lot as supports.
Yeah. My family was very supportive during this. Probably couldn't have made it honestly without some of my closest friends. I was in therapy. And it like this wasn't something that happened overnight, right? Like even my physical healing, it took me months because I didn't have any strength, right? I'm not eating.
Sure.
I couldn't go to the gym. So it was like I started with stretching.
Small steps.
Exactly. I have a mentor through I know through my social work side. He was incredible. He was very supportive. I was like, you know what, I need to receive all the support, all the love, and determine what path is right for me, right? You know, recognizing also in that situation, I'm not somebody who asks for help a lot. I'm like, I'll do it myself. I'll figure this out. I think in that time as well, I was like, I need help. I need support because I don't think I couldn't have done it by myself.
And asking for help is okay.
It is. And it's hard sometimes because for me, it was the shame, right? Like I knew better. I knew that situation was not good for me. So then asking for help, I was like, it takes a level of like, I would say acceptance of the situation and being like, I'm in over my head and I do need the help. That was a big challenge for me as well.
Was it hard to start telling people what happened? Were you afraid to?
Absolutely. Especially for the first few months, because I was like, am I going to disrupt the peace? Is he going to come find me and lash out? What are people going to say? You know, are they going to say I'm lying? I live in a small community and I know that he shared a significant amount of not truthful things about the situation and about me. So I had, unfortunately, a lot of feedback from his friends and family that was not helpful nor appreciated. Telling the truth about it eventually, I was just kind of like, this happened. This is the situation. Because at first, I also still had that sense of like I wanted to protect him. And then at the end of it, I was like, I don't owe him anything. This is my side of the story.
Why do you think you wanted to protect him?
I think I felt sorry for him. I knew how he was going to cope with the situation, so I knew that wasn't going to have a good outcome. I felt sorry for the way that he chose to live his life and the decisions he made. But that's also not mine to carry, right? He makes his choices. I made
That's a very good point.
He chose to cope the way that he chose. Like, that's not It's not on me to carry. And so eventually, like I said, once I let go of that, I was just like, you're an adult.
Yeah, right. You do you.
You're right. I'm going to go over there and do me.
Does he still try and contact you?
It's been about a year now since there hasn't been anything.
I'm glad to hear it.
Me too.
Maybe you can be a little bit more relaxed now.
Yes, definitely. 100%.
And are you still single, or are you in a new healthy relationship?
I'm in a newer healthy relationship. Newish. Still, it's only been, I think, about 7 months, but I would say it's a very healthy dynamic. He's wonderful. And it's still a learning curve for me to recognize that, like, we're still meeting things at conversational level. It's not escalated. There's no chaos. There's no drama. There's no violence, and that's also something new for me to learn, like peace, quiet, comfort, care. Like it's all normal. That's what we want. That's what we worked to have. So now that I have it, I'm like, also have to be mindful during it that, like, okay, this is okay. This is what we wanted. We don't want chaos, and even being able to share some of those, I don't want to call them insecurities.
Areas of struggle.
Exactly, right? From previous events, like being able to communicate those and it be received and responded in a very, like, healthy, empathetic, understanding way is very nice. I am very grateful for him.
I'm happy that you found somebody that's treating you well. In the past, were you always in chaotic relationships? Were you in other kinds of abusive relationships?
Not abusive, but I would say that I don't think I was the healthiest partner in some of those relationships as well. But I would say they were always very chaotic.
Sometimes we feel like a lot of people, it's like, oh, we never fight. And that's like a sign of a good relationship, which I'm not sure that I exactly agree, because I think disagreeing is healthy.
I think healthy conflict is good.
Healthy conflict, exactly.
Right? We don't need tables flipped, things smashed.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can have varied opinions about things and be able to talk about them.
Exactly. And I think, remembering, like, you're two different individuals with different experiences. So compromise and also healthy conflict.
Wow. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Like,
I think if I could say one other thing to anybody who is...
Say anything you want, lady.
For those who have been in an abusive relationship or in a violent one or maybe leaving one, like I said, I can't speak to everybody's experiences, but forgiving yourself is a big step in healing. Forgiving yourself for being in that relationship, for, forgiving yourself for not leaving when you knew you should have. Anything that you carry around shame or anything, take the time, and it is worth forgiving yourself, like truly, deeply forgiving yourself for all of that.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, because I don't think, shame and guilt, embarrassment, all those emotions can weigh, like, really heavily on you. And I know I spent months feeling them. When I realized that, I was like, you know what, I need to forgive myself. I did the best I could with what I had. Yeah, I can't change those decisions, can't change the event, but forgiving myself is the one thing that I can do and that I'm in control of.
I think that's an important part of the puzzle. And I'm glad you said it, because a lot of the time I think we focus on, like, forgiving the other person and we kind of forget about ourselves.
Exactly. And forgiving somebody else plays a role as well. There's no timeline on that, but in order to, like, let go of the situation and fully move on, like, I would say it's part of the process as well. But I think forgiving yourself plays an even bigger role.
Agreed. Because we're only human.
Exactly. Right. And if anybody's like me, I'm very hard on myself. No, that's why forgiving myself was a very big piece.
I've really enjoyed talking to you today.
Yes, well, thank you for having me.
Make sure you don't miss an episode by signing up for the Suckville email community. Just go to livefromsuckville.godaddysites.com. On that same handy page, you can leave me a voice message using SpeakPipe to answer any questions from the show, leave feedback, or thank someone. A special thanks to all my guests and to Chris Kirby for the amazing theme music. This episode was recorded in my kitchen and produced by yours truly. Until next time.